Sometimes the beauty of nature collides with its harsh realities, and we are reminded of the incredible connection between humans and the wild. One such story unfolded off the coast of Hartley Bay, British Columbia, where a majestic orca found herself stranded on a bed of sharp rocks. Her cries for help echoed across the water, stirring the hearts of everyone who heard them. What followed was a race against time, a tale of hope, and a shining example of what humans can achieve when they unite for a cause bigger than themselves. Would the rescuers succeed in helping the orca return to the ocean? Be sure to keep watching. It was an ordinary day for Eric, a local sailor aboard the vessel Bangarang, as he navigated the waters near Hartley Bay. But his routine took a dramatic turn when he spotted something unusual, a black and white figure motionless on the rocks. As he moved closer, the heartbreaking reality came into view. A massive orca, helplessly stranded, its body wedged between jagged stones, crying out in desperation. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Eric didn't hesitate. He immediately placed a call for help. Reaching out to Whale Point, the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, and the Gitga'at Guardians. These organizations are known for their dedication to marine life, and they responded with urgency, assembling a rescue team to save the trapped orca. The team at Whale Point shared the emotional journey on Facebook, detailing the steps taken to save the orca. Their post reflected the intensity of the situation. Today was one of very high emotions. It started with a call from Eric Asawams on the Bangarang that he just spotted a beached orca. The Guardians from Hartley Bay were soon on their way, as were we at Whale Point, with WWF also on board. With time of the essence, the team sprang into action. Eric had ingeniously put together a makeshift water pump using available materials. Meanwhile, the rescuers gathered sheets, buckets, and any tools they could use to keep the orca comfortable and hydrated. When they reached the site, they approached the orca with great care. These are intelligent and sensitive creatures, and the team didn't want to cause her additional stress. They worked quietly and methodically, covering the orca with damp sheets to protect her skin from the sun and using the pump to keep her body wet. The rescue was as emotionally taxing as it was physically demanding. The orca cried out frequently, her distress palpable and heart-wrenching. Rescuers couldn't help but feel the weight of her pain and fear, yet they drew strength from their shared determination to save her. It was a team effort, and fortunately, on some level, this transient orca understood that we were trying to help. The Whale Point team shared. The bond between humans and animals was evident in these moments. Despite her suffering, the orca seemed to recognize that these strangers were not a threat but allies. Her cries spurred the rescuers to work faster, knowing that every passing minute increased the risk of dehydration or injury. For over 6 hours, the team tirelessly worked to keep the orca stable as they waited for the tide to rise. Slowly, the water began to inch closer, offering a glimmer of hope. The rescuers cheered as the tide reached the orca, lifting her gently off the rocks. She cried often, which tore at our hearts, but as the tide came up, there were many cheers as this whale was finally free, the team recounted. As the water enveloped her, the orca began to move, testing her strength. The rescuers stood by, watching in awe and relief as she gained momentum and finally swam away. The story didn't end there. Just beyond the rocky shore, the orca's pod had been waiting, their presence a comforting reminder of her connection to the wild. When the stranded orca swam out to sea, she didn't have to look far to find her family. The rescuers watched with joy as she rejoined her pod, their sleek bodies cutting through the water as they moved as one. The rescue of this stranded orca, is a shining example of what can happen when communities come together for a shared purpose. The collaboration between Eric, Whale Point, WWF, and the Gitgat Guardians was nothing short of extraordinary. In their Facebook post, Whale Point expressed their gratitude, a giant thank you once again to this amazing community that comes together so quickly to protect what is sacred. This story isn't just about the orca's survival, it's a testament to the power of teamwork and the deep respect many people have for the natural world. It serves as a reminder that when we act with compassion and urgency, we can make a profound difference. The rescue highlights the unique challenges faced by marine animals and the role humans play in protecting them. Orcas, or killer whales, are highly social creatures, known for their intelligence and strong family bonds. Yet, their lives are not without risks. Stranding incidents, whether due to injury, disorientation, or environmental factors, can be fatal without timely intervention. The efforts of the Hartley Bay community and the organizations involved saved not just a life, but an entire family dynamic. For the Orca's pod, her return was a reunion that preserved their natural order and reinforced the strength of their bond. The rescue of the stranded orca is a story of triumph, but it also underscores the importance of vigilance and preparedness. The quick thinking of Eric and the rapid response of the rescue team were critical in this situation. Their actions inspire us to stay alert and proactive in safeguarding marine life. If this story has touched your heart, consider supporting organizations like Whale Point, WWF, and the Gitgat Guardians. These groups work tirelessly to protect marine animals and their habitats, ensuring that creatures like this orca have a future in our oceans. As the video about the orca rescue concludes, viewers are left with a sense of awe and hope, as the image of the orca reuniting with her pod is a poignant reminder that even in the face of adversity, there's always the possibility of a happy ending. The ripples created by this rescue extend far beyond Hartley Bay, inspiring people around the world to value and protect the natural world. This extraordinary event reminds us that every life matters and that we all have a role to play in preserving the delicate balance of our planet's ecosystems. Together, we can create more stories of hope and resilience, just like this one. Animal conservation is not just about saving individual species, it's about preserving the delicate balance of our planet's ecosystems. Every creature, from the smallest insect to the largest whale, plays a vital role in maintaining biodiversity and ensuring the health of our environment. When we protect animals, we are also safeguarding the resources and natural systems that humanity depends on for survival. One of the most significant reasons for conservation is biodiversity. Each species contributes to the intricate web of life, supporting processes like pollination, seed dispersal, and nutrient cycling. When species are lost, these systems can become imbalanced, leading to cascading effects that may harm other wildlife and even humans. The decline of pollinators like bees can directly impact agriculture and global food supplies is a clear testament. Conservation is also crucial for maintaining healthy ecosystems. Predators like orcas, for instance, help regulate prey populations, ensuring that marine ecosystems remain vibrant and sustainable. Without them, certain species may overpopulate, leading to depletion of resources and ecosystem collapse. Protecting apex predators like orcas benefits the entire food chain, and, by extension, the oceans that provide oxygen and regulate our climate. Beyond ecological benefits, animal conservation has cultural, ethical, and economic importance. Many communities view wildlife as sacred and integral to their heritage. Ethically, we have a responsibility to coexist with the animals that share our planet, ensuring their survival for future generations. Economically, wildlife tourism generates significant revenue for many countries, creating jobs and funding further conservation efforts. Stories like the rescue of the stranded orca in Hartley Bay show us the profound connection humans have with nature. They remind us that we can make a difference when we act with compassion and determination. However, conservation requires ongoing effort. Supporting organizations, advocating for policies that protect wildlife, and reducing our environmental footprint are all ways we can contribute to this critical mission. The story of the stranded orca is a powerful reminder of why conservation matters. It's about protecting the fragile bond between humans and nature and ensuring that every living being has the chance to thrive. Together, we can build a world where animals and humans coexist in harmony. Let's take inspiration from stories like this and play our part in preserving the natural world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving us a thumbs up. Tell us what you think in the comment section and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.